Welcome once again to Lehto's Law. Here's Steve Lehto.
I had quite a few people forward an email to me. Not just send me links to stories, but forward an email they had gotten to me and said, Steve, check this out. Well, the cool thing is I got the email also. And it's a happy ending to a story that involves the Institute for Justice. And the fact that other people got this email, of course, indicates that these are people who are now helping out the Institute for Justice and are on a mailing list and have gotten these emails. And so here's what the email says. This weekend, Institute for Justice client Jerry Johnson finally got back the nearly $40,000 that police seized from him at a Phoenix airport after 2.5-year legal battle. Jerry is the owner and operator of a small trucking company in North Carolina. He flew to Arizona in 2020 to attend an auto auction. In his luggage was $39,500 he had saved to buy his third semi-truck. So he's a business owner trying to build his business. Flying domestically with cash in any amount is completely legal, but that didn't stop police from accusing him of laundering money and seizing his savings. Prosecutors never charged him with a crime, but they attempted to keep his money using civil forfeiture. When Jerry fought back in court, a judge ruled he failed to prove that the cash taken directly from his bags was his, and therefore he couldn't contest the forfeiture. So Jerry teamed up with the Institute for Justice to appeal that ruling, and the Arizona Appeals Court issued a resounding ruling in Jerry's favor, with one of the judges telling the state's attorney during argument, "I'm sorry if it seems harsh that the state should actually have to come forward with evidence before it takes people's money away at the airport." Despite our victory on appeal, it still took law enforcement almost a year to return what they wrongly seized from Jerry, because Jerry and his family suffered financial hardship and missed business opportunities while his money sat in a government account. We will continue to fight until he's made whole, including interest and the fees he paid to attorneys before the Institute for Justice stepped in. Thank you for your support. It enables IJ to defend the rights of everyday Americans like Jerry. With your help, IJ will keep fighting until we end the abusive practices of civil forfeiture entirely. Signed, Scott. And that, of course, is Scott G. Bullock, President and Chief Counsel at the Institute. And this story is one of the stories, there's several of them, that could be the poster child for the story of civil asset forfeiture and how wrong it is. So I dug up one of the stories from the Arizona Republic, and I did do a video about this guy a while back, okay? But this is from the Arizona Republic. Perry Vandal wrote it. Appeals court reverses decision that denied man's attempt to get $39,000 returned to him. The Arizona Court of Appeals ruled that a man from whom Phoenix police seized $39,500 in cash, despite never submitting criminal charges against him, the man may continue contesting the forfeiture. The decision comes 6 months after Jerry Johnson's attorneys and a representative from the Maricopa County Attorney's Office gave oral arguments before the higher court as to whether the Superior Court's finding that Johnson failed to prove the money was his was correct. They actually went into court and said the man had the money in his suitcase. He said the money was his. We don't believe him. And he has no proof that the money is his. So we're going to keep it because it's not his money. Johnson had flown to Phoenix from Charlotte in August 2020 to purchase a third semi-truck for a small shipping company. Johnson had found a posting for a truck he wanted at a Phoenix-based auction and flew to Phoenix with $39,500 in cash, $7,500 in a carry-on, and $32,000 he'd packed in his checked luggage. He'd previously told the Arizona Republic he chose to travel with cash to avoid incurring fees from withdrawing it at another bank, and had found articles that said traveling with large amounts of cash was perfectly legal. And by the way, it is. That's the sad part. Johnson's money was seized by Phoenix police officers when officers confronted him at Sky Harbor International Airport and questioned the origin of the money. And then they accused him of being involved in a money laundering operation. But the funny part is they accused him of that, but never charged him with that. If you have the basis for a charge, file it. If you don't accuse somebody of something. Johnson said the officer coerced him into signing a waiver indicating the money wasn't his or go to jail. And that was one of the things they used to do. They'd say, here's a waiver where you can sign and admit this isn't your money, but if you don't sign it, we're going to throw you in jail. So what's the average person going to do when faced with being thrown in jail or signing a piece of paper? Such waivers later became illegal after the governor signed a bill that enacted sweeping reforms to the state's civil forfeiture laws, such as requiring a criminal conviction for the state to forfeit one's property in civil court under most circumstances. What a novel idea, actually requiring a criminal conviction if you want to call somebody a criminal. During the oral argument before the Arizona Court of Appeals in November of 21, the three judges repeatedly questioned and criticized a Maricopa County attorney's argument against Johnson. One of them, at one point, referring to the process of civil forfeiture as distasteful. And then, I'm sorry if it seems harsh that the state should actually have to come forward with evidence before it takes people's money away at the airports. And that was the presiding judge, Peter Swan, speaking. The attorney representing the Maricopa County Attorney's Office argued at the time that the money did not belong to Johnson, that it didn't appear to come from Johnson's business bank account, that he didn't know exactly how much cash he was carrying when police confronted him. And at that point, the judge responded, "I don't know how much money I have in my wallet. Do you need to check it? Should I be worried that the police are going to come check my wallet?" That judge then wrote the court's decision saying that the lower court made a mistake in its ruling that Johnson had failed to prove the money was his. The state argues that Johnson failed to prove ownership, but if it is not Johnson's, then whose is it? The judge wrote. The state failed to introduce any evidence of who owned the money, if not Johnson. Institute for Justice, the nonprofit law firm that's representing Johnson's appeal, celebrated the higher court's decision to reverse the lower court's initial ruling, saying today's decision points out the obvious. Jerry Johnson properly proved ownership of his money and has the right to defend it in court. The scales are already tipped in the government's favor in civil forfeiture, but the lower court went outside the bounds of Arizona law when it forced Jerry to prove his own innocence. We're glad that Jerry will have his day in court to defend against the unjust forfeiture of his life savings. Meanwhile, this issue had gone back and forth, meaning that it had gone up and then back down. And the reason I'm pointing that out is that the legal system is expensive to go through. That's one of the things they're banking on is the average person, when they have their money taken from them. If you went into an attorney's office and said, "Hey, I had $39,500 taken from me by the authorities at the airport who say civil asset forfeiture. Can you help me?" The average attorney will tell you, "Well, unfortunately, it costs money. You're going to have to pay me money to sue them and go after that and try to get the money back." And then, of course, you ask, well, is there some way we can get them to pay? No, not really. That's not how the laws work these days. If they fixed the laws, they could solve that. But as of right now, so the question then becomes, how much money will you spend to get your $40,000 back? I know some people on principle say, I would gladly spend $50 to get my $40 back. But there are many people out there who say, well, I understand the matter of principle, but spending $50 to get my $40 back actually would be pointless. So I think I'll stop right now while I'm only $40 behind, because if you go to court and spend $50 and win, you're out $10,000. You spend $50 and lose, you're out a lot more than that. So it's unfortunate that that's how this is structured. But the other thing that they pointed out, which I think is extremely important, is that civil asset forfeiture, like it is here, spins the burden of proof on its head. So we all know that you're innocent until proven guilty. And yet, when they take your money, they go, you sue us and you prove your innocence. So that means the presumption is that you're guilty, or that the money is guilty, as cockamamie as that is. And so that's the other thing that people have a problem with when it comes to civil asset forfeiture. So it's number one, it's unfair that they can take your money and make you pay to get it back. And number two, to get it back, you've got to prove your innocence. And so it's just a real weird thing that this still exists in our society today. So it's really, really good that somebody like the Institute for Justice is out there hammering away at these cases. And I'm going to mention again, I'll put a link to them in the description below the video. They do great work. I'm a huge supporter of theirs, as are many of the people in my audience. And if you have not done this yet, and I'm just telling you, go to the website of theirs and simply look at the work they do, the kinds of cases they handle, the people they help out, And you realize these are the kind of people who normally couldn't get help and are in situations like this where even if they had the money to pursue it, it would still kind of be a non-starter of a case because of the fact that it's questionable whether you should spend that kind of money to get your money back. So they do great work, and if you can, please support them because they survive entirely by the support of people who see what they do and say, I want to support them. So I was pleasantly surprised. I got the email from Scott Bullock, the president and chief counsel at the Institute for Justice. I got that email and I saw what the subject line was. And all of a sudden I started getting forwarded copies from people in my audience saying, Steve, have you seen this? Have you seen this? Have you seen this? And like I said, it's great that people send me stories and I appreciate that. But it indicated to me how many other people have gotten onto their mailing list and are supporting them in one way or another. And if you haven't got money to support them, you can support them simply in spirit, just moral support, by just going there, reading what's on the site, signing up for their newsletter, whatever it is you do. Just go there and see what they do and just to appreciate what they do, because these cases and many others that aren't even civil asset forfeiture cases are the kind of cases where you look at it and go, if it wasn't for these people at the Institute for Justice, nobody would be helping these people. And so Jerry, for instance, the guy who flew to Arizona and had his $40,000 taken from him, would have gone back to where he came from, out $40,000, with just a really, really bad memory of an ugly trip he took to Arizona. So it's a great outcome, but the scary part is that once they'd won this in court, it somehow took the government a year to cut the man a check and give him his money back. So they are still pursuing in court, getting restitution for the other portions of damages that he suffered, including lost interest and the legal fees and so on. But at least he got the $39,500 back. So the version of the story I read to you today is from Perry Vandal at the Arizona Republic. But again, it's the Institute for Justice sending out the email with the good news. Questions or comments, put them below. Let's talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching Lehto's Law. Sunsets are proof that no matter what happens, every day can end beautifully.